Welcome back. Our next guest is attorney LaKeisha Jefferson. Ms. Jefferson is a native of Louisiana and an attorney in the greater New Orleans area with a concentration in family and domestic law. She received her JD from Southern University Law Center in 2003. As an attorney, LaKeisha has handled family law cases in the trial, appellate, and the Louisiana Supreme Court level. Thank you for being here, Ms. Jefferson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's our pleasure. So we have a bunch of questions for you. How about we jump right in?
All right.
All right, let's do it. First question. If the past is a predictor of the future, how about you tell us about your past experience, especially in handling family law cases? What have you done in handling such cases in court, and what are some of the achievements you think voters should be aware of? And what can you or anyone in your court, if you are elected, expect from you if they go before you?
Well, I started out my career as a judicial law clerk. It was not in the area of family law, however, but eventually I migrated into the area of family law, which I'm sure we'll talk about that a little later. But I found myself working for Southeast Louisiana Legal Services, where I got a great foundation learning how to actually have trial experience in that area. I also worked for Project SAVE, which is a public interest local law group where they assist victims of domestic violence with obtaining protective orders and emergency ancillary relief. And then I also was a prosecutor for the city attorney's office for almost 12 years, where I prosecuted offenders of domestic violence statutes. So I have a great deal of experience in that area. I got a great foundation as it relates to trial work and trial experience. And so just working with clients every day and understanding the plight that they face when they walk into a family courtroom is kind of, how I got into this, and just making sure that their needs are addressed and that they can get back to work and, take care of their families.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. What do you see as the most pressing issue facing family court today?
So I would say I think it's a tie between child custody litigation and how contentious it can be and how much of a strain it actually puts on the children that are in the middle. And I say that is a tie with domestic violence, because what we have right now is we've got Title 46, which in layman's terms, it's a statute that really kind of governs the protective orders themselves. So we're dealing with a lot of domestic violence, abuse, but then we also have the stalking component, which can translate into dating partners as well as parties who may have been married at one point, or sometimes as it relates to the stalking statute, it could just be kind of everyday citizens, neighbor disputes, things like that. So I'd say that I think some of the challenges that we face is that because there is an overabundance of cases, then you seeing like a slowing and a kind of clogging of the docket. So, but I think that there are creative ways that we all can kind of brainstorm and come up with to make certain that that doesn't happen, because the reality is, John, people have got to get out of court and back to work. And that's really one of my primary concerns.
Okay. Next question. What is your vision for the future of family court in New Orleans? What changes, if any, would you advocate for, and why?
Well, I think that one of the things is we've got to have more wraparound services. And I think that that is the vision that everybody has had, especially with the establishment of the Family Justice Center. For those who don't know what that is, the Family Justice Center is kind of a one-stop shop where victims and survivors can go to have all of their, not just their legal needs addressed, but also counseling and family therapy for their children. But we need more wraparound services like the Family Justice Center. So I think that with the use of the court system, especially in civil court, we already have a pilot program that was started for family law mediators. But I think that in addition to mediators, we need to have more wraparound services relative to family therapy, relative to other issues that are facing these families. And so I think that that involves a conversation, more communication between the courts, these other areas such as the Family Justice Center, other licensed counselors and professionals, and then also the other criminal court judges. So we have the district court judges, and then we also have traffic and municipal judges, which also handle other domestic violence cases. And so oftentimes what I have seen is that there could be a gap, or let's say a hole that needs to be filled, right? So if I know that criminal court has issued, let's say, a stay-away order in connection with criminal prosecution, and then I have a civil protective order that issues a physical custody schedule, then if these two courts are not communicating, then what can happen is we could put a family in a situation where there's a violation of one of those orders if the criminal court judge doesn't know what the civil court judge is doing. And I've seen that in my practice a million times, where we may have to go in and contact the DA's office, let's say, to say, look, we have this physical custody schedule, tell me how that affects the criminal stay-away order so that there's no violation. So I'd say more communication between different agencies is what I think will bridge that gap.
And you would think, just to follow up on that, that in this age of computers, that especially where someone is, it has to do with abuse or protection of children or abuse victims, that they ought to be able to figure out how to do that, right? And I hope that they figured it out in other cities. You can look at how they solve that riddle in other places, but it sounds like a very intriguing idea. So next idea. Next question. What sets you apart from your opponent in this race?
So as I said, I've worked for a lot of different agencies, such as Project Save, such as the City Attorney's Office, such as Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. But in my own private practice, I often worked at those agencies at the same time as building my private practice. So I believe that I have a great deal of trial experience that I think translates well when you are transitioning to the bench. If you have, let's say, a candidate who doesn't have as much trial experience, then you don't understand the practicalities of when, let's say, a physical custody schedule is issued. You don't know how that kind of translates into the family's life, because you don't hear from them again unless and until there's, let's say, a motion filed or some sort of rule for contempt that may be filed. The court has no idea what's going on. And so I think that when you've not been a family court trial practitioner to the extent that I have been, then I think that there are things that maybe you just don't have the foresight to see. So I think that what sets me apart from my opponent is that not only do I bring real trial practical experience to this, to my qualifications and for this position, but I also have real life and real world experience that I think that I will bring to the bench as well. When you're dealing with, sometimes traditional families are not the way that we have seen them in the past. We have many more blended families that are coming into family court than there were before, and sometimes, as you know, our legislation just doesn't keep up with the way that society is changing, right? And so I come from a blended family where I had brothers and sisters who were moving in and out of the home well before there were actual, printed physical custody schedules. I mean, we're talking, I don't want to date myself, but we're talking, a good ways back. And even then, I had brothers and sisters who were coming in and out of the home on different custody schedules, and we had to adjust to that. And so because I've actually lived that myself, I believe that I will also bring real world practical experience to the bench as well.
Okay, well, we're starting to run short on time, so we'll see if we can fit in maybe two more questions. Next question. Can you point to a difficult decision in your personal or professional life that maybe you had to make a tough decision that was unpopular, maybe caused you some pushback, that helps us understand how you would handle your position as a judge that affects people, and maybe kind of a shorter answer, because I want to get to
Sure, no problem.
I want to try and get to maybe one or two more.
Okay. So yes, I think that, dealing with family law cases, it's often that you will be faced with those kinds of decisions. It's not easy to look at a client and say, I understand emotionally what you mean and morally what your issue may be. but legally, this is what the law says, right? And so I had a case, which was the case that I've spoken about relative to my Supreme Court experience, that actually had to take a writ in the Supreme Court because the question was whether it was abuse versus discipline. And so it was a difficult decision for me to make, to encourage my client to not only appeal to the Fourth Circuit, but also to take it all the way to the Supreme Court for that particular issue, because although, the trial court didn't agree, I still believe, that he had the right to discipline the children.
Okay. Last question, and this one's important. What is your ballot number and what is your website address for those who would like to learn more about you?
Yes. So my ballot number is 84, and my website is Vote for LaKeisha. That's vote, the number 4, LaKeisha, LaKeisha.
Great. So people can find out more about you and your platform by visiting your website.
Yes.
I'm afraid that looks like that's all the time we have left for this interview and for today. Thank you for joining us on the show today, and we look forward to airing the program and letting everyone know more about you and your opponent, Judge D'Souza. Thank all of you for joining us for this episode of John Redmann, Power of Attorney. We hope these interviews helped you get to know the candidates so you are in a better position to vote better. Remember to keep updated through your local news and online resources as to the current COVID guidelines for voting at your designated ballot station and in voting practices. And remember, you can view this show and any of our shows at johnredmannpoa.com. Be on the lookout for more special election episodes of John Redmann, Power of Attorney. There are many other local races happening on November 3rd. Find out where to vote, what's on your ballot, and much more by visiting govotela.org. Stay safe. Get out there to vote on November 3rd. I'm your host, John Redmann, and I look forward to seeing you next time on this show. Thanks very much.